Good evening, church. Good to see all y'all back this morning, and those that weren't able to make it this morning, we're glad you're here as well. So this morning we looked at what we are called to be as fathers. We looked at that we are called to be men. We are to stand firm in the faith. We are to guide our families in love. We are to raise them in the faith, and the legacy we need to strive to leave is that our kids will continue to serve God long after we have passed from this earth. That is our goal, isn't it? And this evening, I actually want to go to more examples of fathers, both good and bad, in the Bible. We have many examples in the Bible. Like I said this morning, we could probably sit here and pull a big list of fathers in the Bible. There's a lot of fathers in the Bible. So we're not going to cover them all tonight, right? But we're going to cover a few. And I want to start with Noah. So we're going to go to Genesis 5:32. After Noah was 500 years old, Noah fathered Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So I want to start by asking you men and even women, can you imagine having a kid at 500 years old? Oh my goodness. And now I will say that Max was born with me. I was a little older in life, so I was 42 when Max was born, so I'm a little later than most have children. But in today's age, this 500 years old, we know it's a little bit different. They lived longer, so their aging wouldn't have been quite the same as ours. But can you imagine being 60 or 70 and having a kid? Man. And that's what we look at with Noah. He was 500 years old. Genesis 9:18 and 19. The sons of Noah who went from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the people of the whole earth were dispersed. So Noah, the father here of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, he raised them in a way that they followed him into the ark. Ham became the father of Canaan. What would have happened if Noah had raised these sons to fear the Lord in a way that they knew that they had better get on that boat? What would have happened? And we see that all the world basically was populated through these three sons. And this is what we're called to do, isn't it, fathers? We're called to raise our kids so that they have the same fear of the Lord as we do. We stand firm in the faith with love so that we set the examples that our kids need to see. Our children, they watch and they copy us. They do this way more than you think they do. They watch your every move. And the more we follow Christ, the more they will do the same. But we have to do this in love, mustn't we? Just like we must show love to everyone so that they will know us and come to know Christ by our love. But I want you to think about this. Picture yourself as one of his sons. You're roughly 100 years old at this point. And Noah says, God told me to build an ark because it's going to rain and flood the earth. Okay, I've never seen rain. So I'm going to be like, Dad, what is rain? Well, it's this water that's going to fall out of the sky. Dad, that's never happened before. And then you're like, well, I know, isn't that crazy? God said to build an ark and warn everyone else that doesn't get on the ark that they will die. And then his sons, well, if God said to do it, when do we start? Right? That's how he raised his sons. This is our job too, isn't it? The Lord said to do, so we do it. The Lord said to never forsake the assembly. So he set the examples that we're supposed to set. Our kids watch us, and they will never forsake the assembly. The Lord says to be baptized. So what do? We get baptized, and our kids will follow that action if they're watching us. We build a massive boat like the world had never seen before, and our kids get in. Everyone else on earth is wiped out, and then the kids, the one that followed his commandments, repopulated the earth. So I look at Noah here. Noah was a very good example of what a father should be. He was so good of an example, he preached in taught for about 120 years while he built that ark. He kept preaching. He kept preaching. Now, nobody was listening, but he kept preaching. And then 8 of them, the kids and their wives, and Noah and his wife, got on the ark. Well, let's look at Jacob. Turn to Genesis 37, 1 to 11. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojourning in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was the son of his old age. And he had made a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, there were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dream and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars are bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him. But his father kept the saying in his mind. So we see here that Jacob loved and showed that he loved Joseph more. And then the brothers, and I mean so much more that his other sons knew it and they got jealous. This isn't what we're called to do as fathers, is it? Colossians 3:21. Fathers, do not provoke your children lest they become discouraged. And I don't think this is often looked at as provoking your children to wrath. But Jacob showed favor, even high favor is what we see. He made them this nice, pretty coat, right? And back then, that was something to get. So he made this nice, pretty coat, and he handed it to Jacob, and everybody knew that he had this nice, pretty coat, and they didn't, because he didn't do the same for all the other brothers. So I could see this. I could see being, when I was young and thinking back, if it was for no reason and one of my siblings got a nice, pretty something and I didn't get it, I could see a little bit of jealousy setting in. But he did it so much so that they hated him. And what did the brothers do? Genesis 37:18 to 28. They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood, throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand and restore him to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, and there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat. And looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph and lifted him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. Jacob had provoked his sons to wrath by showing favoritism to Joseph. And our actions with that speak louder than anything we could ever say, especially with your children that are watching your every move. His brothers had gotten so jealous and hated him so much that they sold him and told their father he had been killed. They sold him for 20 pieces of silver. And I'm 8 years older than Andy, my brother. Some of you know Andy, so I'm 8 years older. And I can tell you that I got extremely mad at him on a few occasions. More than one. Probably more than 100. But I don't recall ever wanting to sell him. Smack him in the face? Yes. It happened more than once. Sell him to slave traders? Not so much. That would take a hate so great that would take a provoking and a jealous buildup so powerful. It just shows where their hearts were, doesn't it? And this is one of the lessons that God has put in the Bible to learn what not to do from it, isn't it? I highly suggest us fathers to take this to heart. We need to dig into that Bible so that we can learn from these fathers and not make the mistakes that they have made. I don't want to stand up here and be like the Pharisee and be like, oh, I'm glad I'm not like that. I don't want to do that. I want to learn from their mistakes. We always hear the term learn from others' mistakes, so we don't have to go through the same life lessons that they went through. And this is one of those lessons. Now I want to skip over to Abraham. Genesis 21, 1-7. The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. Again, Abraham and Sarah had Isaac at an old age, just as the Lord had promised. Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was 90 years old. So men, imagine that. You're 100 years old, having a son. Women, imagine 90 years old and having a son. My goodness. That'd be terrible, wouldn't it? That'd just be terrible. But if God says, hey, I'm going to give you a son, guess what? You have a son. They had waited all those years, and they had waited a long time for God to fulfill that promise. They weren't very patient with it, but that's another story for another lesson. That's a whole different story, and I'm not going to look at tonight. But God did finally fulfill his promise, and he gave them a son. And this is a lesson for us fathers that aren't very patient. I know I'm not very patient at times. It's not on our time, is it? It's always on God's time. Genesis 15, 5-6. And he brought him outside and said, look toward heaven and number the stars, if you are able to number them. Then he said to him, so shall your offspring be. And he believed the Lord, and he counted it to him as righteousness. Isaac, the one here, the one that all of this offspring would come from, the one that God had blessed them with is what he's talking about here. You're going to have more offspring through Isaac than the stars in the sky. Genesis 22, 1-8. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. He said, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him, and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his young men, stay here with the donkey, and I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they went both of them together. And Isaac said to his father Abraham, my father. And he said, Here I am, son. He said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they went both of them together. So now think about that. God tells Abraham to go and sacrifice his son, his one and only son. As they are walking, Isaac starts wondering, where's the lamb from the sacrifice? Imagine this, you're Isaac and you're walking along. Maybe you get a funny feeling about things. And he's looking around and you got the wood and you got the fire and you see all the other stuff for the sacrifice except for the lamb. And he told the other guys to wait back here. And you're walking and you're like, wait a second. Something isn't right here. Let me ask Dad. He's old and forgetful nowadays, right? He's 100 years old. He's forgetful. Let me see what's going on. Hey, Dad, where's the lamb? Are we going to offer a sacrifice to God? Don't worry, son. The Lord will provide. Oh, okay. That seems legit. Dad is always talking about how the Lord has provided for our every need so far, so I don't see a reason why he wouldn't now. And they kept on hiking up the mountain to offer the sacrifice. Genesis 22, 9-14. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built an altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He said, Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the name of that place, The Lord Will Provide. As it is said to this day, On the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. So we see here that they trek up the mountain. So they hike up this mountain, and Abraham is still probably wondering, where's the ram? Where's the lamb? Where's it at? Right? I would still have that in the back of my mind. What's going on? And then Abraham starts building an altar. It's not like the altar was already up there, so he had to Isaac probably helped gather some rocks. It doesn't say, but more than likely, stack the rocks up and put it in the altar the way it would have been done back then. He gets the altar built, and then he bounds Isaac on it. Think about that. And this is just my assumption. The Bible doesn't say this, but I'm assuming that Isaac, now he may have put up a little bit of fuss. He might have been like, whoa, wait a second, what are you talking about? But I'm assuming that Isaac just laid down and allowed his father to do so. This is an incredible act of faith on both their parts, isn't it? And I think, personally, looking at the age of Isaac and the age of Abraham, right? They assumed that Isaac was a young man by this time, so probably a late teens. So you got a strapping 18, 19-year-old. Then you got a 118-year-old man. I think it would have been pretty hard for that 100-something-year-old man to wrangle him down to sacrifice him. I don't know, but I think it would be. Or I have a feeling that 18, 19-year-old man could have just been like, I'm okay, Pops, just to outrun him. Pretty sure he could outrun him. Abraham raised his son in a way that when God says to do, you do. No matter what it is or how hard it seems, you do it all the while trusting the Lord will provide. Fathers, this is what we're called to do, isn't it? We're to set those examples so that our kids will see our fear of the Lord, and they will also have that same type of fear. This is how we are to raise them. And the funny side of this story, now this is an extreme example of faith, but the funny side of this story that always catches me all the time, I have a feeling that if Abraham ever said to Isaac again, say, hey man, son, we're going to go over to this mountain, he's probably like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to stay home. But we got to go to this mountain. Nope, I'm good. Yeah, you're not doing that again. That's just the funny side. I always think about that. It's like, I wonder what the hanging out life with Pops would be after that. But that's how we raise our children, isn't it? And how do we do this? We pull our Bibles out. We read them. We study them. We read them to our children when they're young. We read them to our children when they're older. We have them help us study with them. We take them to church. We get them in class. We do all of this stuff. Everything that God calls us to do, we always put God first. We don't, I know a lot of people do this, and this is one of the things that me and Amy had talked about before we even got married was I was big into sports, and my parents did this as well, but we had talked about it as we will never put sports over church. Not going to happen. Oh, we've got a game on Wednesday night, tough. Hate it. Not going to happen. And we wouldn't do that. Or we've got scrimmages, or we've got practice on Sunday afternoon. Well, we can go for so long, but then we have to be at church. We put everything below God. All of it. Every bit of it. And we have to do this ourselves too, right? I can't say, son, you can't go to your baseball game, but the next thing you know, it's the World Series, I'm going to stay home from church. That's not correct either. We can record all that stuff. We can watch it afterwards. We can watch the highlight reels. This is how we do this. We set the example for our sons. We are called to be men. We are to stand firm in the faith. We are to hold to the faith no matter what. No matter what life throws at us. When they see us in the hard times, when they know we're having a bad day, and then they see us start praying. When they're having a bad day, we say, son, let's go to God about it. Let's talk about it. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it according to the Bible. This is how we do it. Let's pray. Dear Lord, our Father in heaven, we humbly come before you once again, seeking your guidance to be the fathers that you would have us to be. Lord, help us raise our children in a way that will draw them to you. Help us to be the examples for them that we need to be so that they will see our love for you. Help us to stand firm in our faith. Trusting that you know best. We are told in Isaiah 55 that your thoughts are not our thoughts, and your ways are not our ways, that your ways are higher than our ways, and your thoughts are higher than our thoughts. Lord, help us to look to and trust your ways. You have laid out all the instructions for us fathers to raise our children in the truth. Help us to always come to you in our times of need so that our children will do the same. Help us to show them that Christ is the head of our house. Joshua tells us to put away all other gods and to serve the Lord. Help us to put away all things that have become idols to us and serve you and you alone. Help us to say, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Help us to leave our legacy of our children being in the Lord. Our children being in that boat, the church. Our children being able to spread the word after we've passed from this earth. Lord, we ask these things in Jesus' most holy and gracious name. Amen.
We would love for you to visit us at the Edgewood Church of Christ, 200 Edgewood Drive, Greenville, South Carolina, 29605. At our next appointed service times, we have Sunday services. We have our Bible class at 9:30 a.m., our worship service at 10:30 a.m., and then our p.m. worship service on Sunday is at 5 p.m. And then we have a midweek Bible study Wednesday at 7 p.m. We would love for you to join us for one of those services, anyone that you can make. Hope to see you soon.